Welcome to the Speak Like a Leader podcast with John Bates. Welcome to the show. With me today is someone whom I hold in very, very high regard. He is someone who makes a difference for people. Back when I met him, he was making an enormous difference. And since I've met him, that difference has only gone exponential. He is somebody who came up with a totally life-altering, medicine-altering treatment for keratoconus, which I'll let him tell us about. He worked with someone on the U.S. bobsled team who was in dire need of his help. And in fact, there's a documentary out now, which we'll talk about his process and about this partnership to get to, Olympic gold in the bobsled with someone who is not going to be able to do that without this process. And now he has 3.2 million followers on TikTok. And he also has a podcast called the No Cap Health Show. And by the way, for those of you that are not super hip, no cap is the same as saying no BS, because for Gen Z, cap is BS. So the No BS Health Show, to translate it. And you can find, his name is Dr. Brian Boxer Wachler, MD. And he is just one of my favorite people around. You can find him at boxerwachler.com. His TikTok handle is Brian Boxer Wachler MD. His Instagram is Dr. Boxer Wachler. And his podcast is the No Cap Health Show. And let me spell that real quick. It's, Dr. Boxer, Boxer, that's obvious, but Wachler is Wachler. So boxerwachler.com, Brian Boxer Wachler MD on TikTok, Dr. Boxer Wachler on Instagram, and the No Cap Health Show. And here he is. Brian, thank you for joining me.
John, I'd do anything for you. You're amazing.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. And the feeling is certainly mutual. So listen, so everybody knows now that you are a massive TikTok star, but it wasn't always like that. Back a long time ago, you were just a world-leading ophthalmologist, right? With a process that was just revolutionary. Will you tell us a little bit about that story? Because so I got to Brian when he was speaking at TEDx Fulbright a number of years ago, and we got to work together. So I got a deep dive into the world of his work then, and it is just an astounding story. So Brian, I'll pass it over to you. Tell us about that first.
So first of all, it's really awesome to be here with you and to talk about all these things we're going to talk about, which will be really fun and enlightening and mostly fun for people to listen to and hear. So this story, how we got connected, our intersection was I had been a cornea specialist as an ophthalmologist eye surgeon. So I was doing cornea transplants for this condition, which I have to applaud you on. You got the proper pronunciation of keratoconus, right?
Yay, I worked on that.
And so that was the standard treatment. And so there was a bobsled driver, his name was Stephen Holcomb. Mm-hmm. He was the prospect for the U.S. at that point for trying to break the drought of Olympic gold medal and bobsled. And he was a bobsled driver, but he was holding a secret. He was losing his vision due to this condition, this eye disease where the cornea is weakened. Imagine your car windshield is weak and it starts bulging out uncontrollably. And you can imagine it's going to cause a lot of distortions, like being in a fun house with those weird mirrors, but not fun at all.
No.
But that's kind of what it does to people's vision because the cornea is like that windshield bulging. So he was losing his vision, but he was so self-conscious, he didn't tell anybody. As he described, he was keeping a secret from everybody. And basically it was like a flat out lie. Yeah. But it got to the point where he felt it wasn't even safe to keep driving because if he flipped the bobsled, which can happen, and he injured other teammates, the guilt he couldn't live with. So he finally told his coach that he had, and unbeknownst to anybody at this time, he actually had attempted suicide and survived, which at the time he hadn't discussed to anybody. But his coach said, well, we'll just get you fixed. And he's like, okay. I mean, everyone's told me I need this cornea transplant, which is a total game stopper as a bobsled driver, because as people may have seen in the Olympics, bobsled's a pretty violent sport. Being bounced around in that bobsled, it's like being in a bag of peanuts that's just getting shaken.
Yeah.
So he had gone to all these other doctors, about 10 or 12 of them. They had said, you need a cornea transplant. And then his team doctor had found me in Beverly Hills and said, there's this guy out there who's doing something that's different. I think it might help you. And so he just appeased them and came out to see me. And I was able to do this treatment where I strengthened the cornea and stopped it from getting worse, which was revolutionary in especially a non-invasive way.
Yeah.
And then we came back with these little lens implants and restored his vision to 20/20. And so he basically came out of retirement and he won the World Bobsled Championship 50-year record, breaking the 50-year drought by winning that. And then the next year in Vancouver at the Olympics won Olympic gold, which broke the 62-year drought.
Wow.
And so that's the story of Stephen. And the documentary that you talked about was about his story, and it was his last interview before he really unexpectedly and sadly passed away. But that's what the documentary is about as well. Well, and that was my TEDx. That was my TEDx talk as well that you helped with tremendously.
And thank you. And it was a real honor and a privilege. And, one of the things that I think is, so first of all, I don't think I was fully clear. I think I had heard, and I think I had kind of stuffed it down that Stephen had passed. So I'm sorry, because I know that you had a very strong friendship together after all that you went through. And I'm sorry for his loss.
Yeah, it was tough and unexpected. Age of 37 to lose somebody like that, who he was still wanting to go to the next Olympics and compete and would have likely medaled. And he was staying at our house. Actually, I remember in the summer, and he had come to LA to do all these interviews for NBC. They shoot all those interviews you see during the Olympics 6 months beforehand. So he was in the summer staying at our house for that week with my kids. My daughters were younger then, and just blended into our family amazingly. Loved our dog, and then like 2 weeks later, we got this news. So it was really tragic.
Gosh, I'm so sorry. And he did you and the world a great favor with his fame, because your treatment was so revolutionary and so innovative that people thought you were making something up, right?
Oh, at the time, because it was preventing people from needing cornea transplant surgeries, I had given my first presentation and I thought I was going to get this standing ovation like you see in the movies, like somebody revolutionary breaks through and everyone's like hailing them.
Yay.
And I got just the opposite, because I was so naive at the time. But, unfortunately, there is politics in medicine that affects patient care. At times it can. And so people were trying to discredit me, other eye surgeons, because
they didn't want to lose their lucrative cornea transplant business. They
didn't want patients to fly out to see me to have this procedure, and then they don't get to do a transplant on them, which, goes so much against what I've always thought. I mean, the whole reason I became a doctor was to help people.
Yeah.
And so when I started realizing there were some bad actors in my field who were really going after me, I mean, not only saying it doesn't work, they were saying what I was doing was illegal. Patients were telling us this, my local eye surgeon said, he should go to jail because he's doing something illegal. I mean, we were hearing this. I mean,
wow,
it was ugly. And so I really had to, do some soul searching and decided I'm going to not give up doing the procedure, because at the time, I was sort of, it was a younger part of my career, and I was kind of like the golden boy, in ophthalmology, like leading, meetings, organizing meetings at a really young age.
Yeah.
And so I suddenly, was on the opposite side of the spectrum. But I thought, you know what? I'm not a doctor to win a popularity contest with my peers. I'm here to help with patients.
Yeah.
And I had real clarity about that. So in the end, as you said, when Stephen won his gold medal, that was like the official stamp of approval because there was a tsunami of media attention because his story was well known. Of somebody who like went blind essentially, lost his vision, got his vision back, and then won Olympic gold medal. So, I mean, it was all over the news, everywhere. And so that really silenced virtually all my critics, like not all of them, because, you know, that's
you
never
can't ever
happen.
silence all of them. Yeah.
But in the end, he really did help me in a way that I had helped him. So we helped each other in that respect.
It's really wonderful. Now, before we go on to some of the more recent things, just because I know a lot of people listening, they want to give a TEDx talk. Maybe they did give a TEDx talk. Maybe they wonder what that's like. Just, can we go back to those moments of you, like before and then during and then after your TEDx talk at TEDx Fulbright? Because what I will say is that TEDx Fulbright, that was an exceedingly prestigious group of people. I mean, that was an amazing lineup that you were a part of. And I think that it was a fabulous, fabulous event. And it certainly doesn't hurt to have the Fulbright name on that. Think back now. I know it's been a while, and you and I haven't talked in a while. We've talked since then, but not much. You know, what stands out to you about that experience? Anything you learned? Anything that you know that just comes up? And then I'd love to hear if that made any difference for you doing that talk going forward. So
I would say that my background is I am a public speaker and have been a speaker ever since college. I was actually on the speech and debate team at UCLA.
Yeah, that's so cool.
So I felt really comfortable being on stage and speaking. I really like it. As a matter of fact, my daughter just did literally yesterday Model UN in high school.
Awesome.
And had to give a talk where they are talking about what country they're representing. And I was giving her these speaking tips. And I said to her, I said, when you're a public speaker, number one, it's such a fun experience and it's powerful because you also get to help the audience and the listeners and in a way that no one else can because everybody's individual. So I was giving her some of these pep, talk insights. So now that we're talking about that, it's kind of really fun timing. But for me, my background as a public speaker and being on the debate team and speech team in college, like I felt really comfortable and I felt like I had it under control. But honestly, your insights to help me even further develop what I needed to for doing that TEDx talk was very, very on point. Even just from like the body language. I mean, I guess I'm answering the question more mechanically as a speaker, and then I'll sort of talk about what it meant.
Anyway, yeah.
So, like something so simple, like we always want to fidget with our hands. And I remember you saying, keep your hands down. Like, don't keep them up like you're praying. I remember just keep them down. But if you need to gesticulate, then do it. But otherwise, just keep your hands at your side. It feels weird, but it doesn't look weird.
Yeah.
And so that was a great tip. And you had a lot of really good insights to help with just fine tuning it even more. And to this day, if I'm talking, like I will keep my hands down unless I need to use them, for example.
That's awesome.
But for me, something happened that was very powerful and unexpected. I had practiced the talk to make sure it was under 18 minutes. And so when I got on stage...
Can I pause you for 1 second? Yeah. You are already a good speaker. You were good enough that you were doing debate and public speaking at a college level. That means you were good. And I worked with you. And you spent time on this thing and you practiced this thing, right? It's not like you just got up there and winged it, right?
No. And I think you explained early on, you're like, this is not something you want to wing. Like you need to, because you want to memorize it. And you'll have slides as cues, but you want to memorize this. And so I did, and I practiced in front of like the mirror, in front of family.
Yeah.
And, but I needed to make sure it still seemed fresh.
Right.
Like with my intonations. So it seemed like it was coming off as the first time. So it's almost like an actor in a way at that point.
Yep.
Really knowing like what they're going to do with the way they say something and their cues. So it was a little bit totally rehearsed, of course, but it didn't come off as rehearsed.
Yeah. You know, I
and
tell
that's,
people,
I think, the beauty.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Yeah.
That's the
Go ahead.
beauty. Well, and you did it, right? Because there's this certain point where you practice so much, it looks like you practiced a lot and it's all robotic and rehearsed. But if you practice enough, you get across that valley of awkwardness over to the other side where you've practiced so much, it looks like you didn't practice at all. And I think that's what you did, right? There's this element of, the art is in hiding the art. You did practice so that it would be flawless, and you practiced so much and stayed so present to it that it felt like the first time, even though it was very well rehearsed.
And I think one tip that can be simple to help give that feel of freshness, even though it may be rehearsed like 100 times, is have pauses. One thing I noticed when my daughter ran through her talk yesterday for the first time, or the day before for yesterday, is she just like ran through it. Like she was like racing home, from school or something. I said, no, you need to, it's going to feel weird, but you have to pause. You need to have these dramatic pauses so people have a chance to think and let it hit. And certain words, you want to raise your voice like that, and you want to punch it. So you have these emotions, and it's not monotone. That's like the most boring thing. So you want to do the opposite. So even though it's rehearsed, you can rehearse having those dramatic pauses. You can rehearse punching words. You can, all those things, and they still seem fresh to the first time when somebody's watching.
Yes. Yes. Oh, sorry. I got a little buzz saw in the background. I'm fixing it. And I love that. And that is really key. And on the show just recently, I had a guy who's an old friend of mine who is now really successful in voiceover. And one of the things he said that goes along with what you just said, Brian, is he said a lot of people come into voiceover because they've got this silky, smooth, beautiful voice, this perfect, for radio and voiceovers and stuff, but they don't end up doing so well because yes, you've got to have a nice voice, but it's not about the nice voice. It's about your ability to convey meaning. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty obvious in hindsight, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it goes back to how you practice, right? I think a lot of times what I see with folks is it's practice. So they kind of run through it like it's a practice. But I tell them, look, no. We practice the way we're going to do it. Imagine that audience and give it that meaning and have those pauses and really land it over there, because we end up performing it just how we practice it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So good advice you gave your daughter. Sorry.
And one tip too, because memorizing 17, 18 minutes of a talk can seem really daunting. And so there were some natural things as devices I would use to remember what I was going to talk about like next. And I would make these visualization uses of words. So just for example, I'm going to throw out this, like, let's say I'm talking about water bottles, and then I'm going to now talk about being outside using water bottles. So I have a yellow water bottle, right, that I have. Mm-hmm. So I would, as this example, I would in my mind be like, okay, I just talked about water bottles. I know I have to now talk about another topic of using them outside, and mine is yellow and outside is bright from the sun. So I would at the end of it have like yellow, or maybe I might say yellow, and that's my cue to be like, now I'm going to talk about using water bottles outside because the sun is like quote unquote yellow. So I would use these, I would put some words at the end of concepts to help remind me where I'm going next. And I peppered my talk with those things as just for me. Yeah. So I have my roadmap in my head, and it works. That's a little tip, hopefully, that people can take and use.
Yeah. I'm going to go find your TEDx talk and I'll put it up, because I just think it's a great thing for people to see. I think you did a great job, and it is such an inspiring story, and it's cool. So then you did that talk and you put that time and that effort in, and you were generous enough to spend some time with me, even though you really didn't need to because you were already a good speaker.
Oh no, you helped me. I needed it. I needed it, believe me.
Well, that's cool. I appreciate that. And then you gave that talk, and then what happened after that? Was that time and effort worth it in any way? 'Cause I really haven't talked about you. This is not a question that I know the answer to yet. But what happened after that talk?
Well, I would say, first of all, during the talk on stage, something that I'd never expected is this rush of emotion that I had repressed.
Yeah.
And I almost cried on stage at one point.
Yeah.
I almost broke down because all the feelings that I had, of the bad feelings had come up and bubbled in that moment, at one moment on stage. And I literally, you can see it, like where I pause and I, like, you're like thinking, oh my gosh, is he going to start crying? Because, we're all at the end of the day human beings. Like, yes, I'm a doctor, I'm a professional, but I'm still a human being. And I still have emotions, right?
Yeah.
So there was this cathartic point, which is what I just mentioned. So there was something I didn't even expect to have happen. I think that was really helpful for me to get through this.
I was really proud of you for that, by the way. And that tends to be something that happens. This process, one of the things I love about the TED format is to really do it deeply and well. There's people process a lot of stuff, and there were those, all that stuff that you went through. And then there you were at at TEDx Fulbright, being recognized and speaking to an audience, and the thought you were credible and wasn't throwing barbs. I was really proud of you for that. I distinctly remember that. And I remember being really proud of you.
Yeah, it was a surprise. And then after the talk, the people that came up to me, I was just like overwhelmed because I thought I did a good job. I felt really good about it. And then I thought, okay, so I told my story and that's it. But afterwards at the break, all these people came up to me. There's one woman who's a judge here in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And she was just like, oh my gosh, and I was just like, it was like this unexpected response from people that clearly struck a chord.
Yeah.
And, which was great. I mean, gratifying, that I had that impact by doing that talk. And, so I think part of it, then I was really moved by Stephen's story, and then knowing, of course, about his suicide attempt, later that led me to help, produce this documentary film about Stephen's life, based on his last interview, because he really then opened up about his mental health challenges, and that, such a great part of open conversation now, which it always wasn't. And so it kind of eventually inspired me to get involved with this movie and, be a producer and put these filmmakers in touch with each other that ended up making the actual movie.
And what's it called, Brian?
It's called Holky.
Holky.
Holky. The Stephen Holcomb story.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's on IndieFlix, picked it up. So IndieFlix is like Netflix, but for independent films.
Yeah.
So they have their own website, indieflix.com, and they're on Apple TV, the app. You can get the app like on Apple or Roku.
That's great. We connected to do this, and I just haven't had time to watch it because I just realized that it was even out, but this is on my list and I am super excited to see it. I think it's going to be really cool.
And it just won 2 awards at film festivals. It won Best Short Documentary at the London International Film Awards, and then also Best Short Documentary at the Hollywood Golden Age Award Film Festival. Oh,
that's cool. That's really cool.
So it's getting a really good response from the festivals too.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So now you went from there and you back to the TEDx talk, good experience, really touched people. And then there's this gap in my knowledge. And now you've got 3.2 million followers on TikTok, and you're doing the No Cap Health Show. Tell us a little bit about how that all happened.
Well, it was really just because of the pandemic. When things slowed down, I had a lot of time, and our office always remained open, but I had a lot of time because we weren't seeing as many patients. So my daughters, who had been on TikTok, and I was familiar with it, said, Dad, there's some really good doctors that are on TikTok. And if you are interested, I think you'd be really good. I've got twin girls, and they're like, we can help you. And I thought, well, it sounds kind of fun. If there's an opportunity to provide good information out there and be fun and entertaining, I'd be game for it. Yep. So they got me started, and I found my niche, basically. Like anything, when you kind of are kicking around and you finally get your groove. So I found my groove, and people really were receptive, and it was obviously answering a big need in the community for understanding which viral videos, mostly health related, are bona fide, true videos about the content, and which are BS, or in Gen Z language is CAP. That's the vernacular for Gen Z. So
very good.
Here I am, this like older guy who's now connected with like the Gen Z generation, on TikTok, and it's been like a public service for me in doing this, because so many people may be pursuing all these crazy, unfounded things to try to better themselves and not be happy with the results. So I'm trying to, and there's a group of doctors that we sort of do this too. I've gotten to know a lot of other doctors, which have been great through the community, that are also sort of influencers. And, that's part of our mission, is really helping to provide this public service.
So you'll point out like a video that's going big at the time, and you'll talk about its whether it's actually got any basis in medical fact or something.
No, I won't.
No. So no. Tell me what you do then.
Most of the time I don't even say anything. I'm just duetting a video that's side by side. And at the top I'll say something like doctor reacts to, and whatever the topic is, like, there was this time, these creams coming out of somewhere, and I don't know, some country, it's not important, but where they were photoshopping people with really bad skin or acne and scars, and they put on this cream, and then suddenly they cut to, it's all blurred out. It's clearly been like edited in like a video program, and it's like all smooth.
Right. Yeah.
So like I would do these videos in this one topic, for example, of doctor reacts to like miracle cream. And so I'm just looking, and I'm making some funny faces, maybe raising an eyebrow and smirking. And then at the very end of the video, I'll put on my cap, my blue hat that says CAP on it, that I had made, custom made caps, which is funny. It's now merch, actually.
Yeah, that's classic. That's classic.
So a lot of times I'm not actually saying a single word. I'm just reacting. And then if people are wanting to know, there's a little suspense, like, is he going to put the cap on or not at the end? And if it's a true thing, because I'll do true ones too, I'll say not cap at the end.
Yeah. That's awesome. So cap or not cap, that's basically
cap or not. And I call it the cap game. I say, let's play and then I say, let's play the cap game. Like in the beginning, like doctor reacts to miracle cream. Let's play the cap game.
That is so great. That's so great. So, well, yeah, I mean, you do have a secret weapon in twin daughters there, right?
They helped. Yeah. Yeah.
That's so fabulous. That's just hilarious. I love it. So, what are some of the, who are some of the people, or what are some of the sayings or the leadership lessons that you've learned along the way? Because you are, clearly a big influencer in the world. You were when I met you, and you're even bigger now, no cap. And I think that, there had to be some people along the way that taught you some things that have helped you achieve this kind of success. What comes up when I ask you about that?
I think my parents set a really good example for us. I've got two younger brothers as well. I think a lot of credit goes to them. And in terms of even things that I think about from time to time is guiding me is a lot of the readings that I've done of Ben Franklin.
Yeah. Okay.
And, he had so much wisdom, right? Even though it was like 250 years ago, but it's still so applicable today.
Yeah.
And one of the things that just gives such clarity. I remember there was one saying something like, never do anything that you don't want on the front page of the newspaper.
Yeah.
I mean, and you read about so many things that have happened, that people have done, they've gotten caught, it's come out. And if that one little idiom was followed,
Yeah.
they wouldn't have done that, and it, wouldn't have whatever happened in the consequences. So
yeah,
I think that's a powerful one. Just don't do anything. Now it's not really a newspaper anymore. It's don't do anything you want on the front page of like Yahoo News.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we have to update. We have to update it now.
Spread all over Twitter or whatever, right?
Right. Exactly. So to me, that's, a lot of what Ben Franklin has written has been pretty powerful for me.
Uh-huh. And going back to your parents, what were some of the things that they did or taught you that have had an impact on the rest of your life?
I think the child rearing philosophy of natural consequences is a biggie. And it's one we used with our own daughters, which is, if I'll give you a great example, and where my mom had learned this from, the teacher used this as an example in her class. So, and it's based on this philosophy of I think it was a pediatrician from a long time ago. And the name of the book was Children, the Challenge, and really went through a lot of detail about this. I think it was like Adlerian psychology or something, but the concept of natural consequences is if a child does something, like let them do it as long as it's not going to be dangerous.
Yeah. And
they have to learn that there's a natural consequence to it. And so, for example, when I was a kid, like young kid, I used to apparently run into my mom's bedroom. My dad had left for work. My mom would sleep in, and I would like just yell, "Batman, Batman, Batman." For whatever reason.
Awesome.
By the way, the irony is that years later in high school, I actually made, not related, a Batman movie with my friends, like this hour-long feature film on Super 8 back in the day.
That's classic.
But in any case, so I used to do this. So my mom would tell me, like, Brian, please don't do that. Like, you're waking me up. I'm not getting enough sleep. And I'd be like, next morning, door flings open, Batman, Batman, Batman.
Yeah.
So she talks to Lynn Swartz, who's a family friend and taught these classes. And so she's like, okay, so this is what you have to do. My mom's name's Bonnie. She goes, Bonnie, next time that happens, don't get up to make him breakfast. And this is what happened exactly on cue. So I go in, do my thing. She doesn't get up to make me breakfast. So eventually I come in, I'm like, Mommy, where's my breakfast? I'm probably like, I don't know, like 2 or 3 years old. She says, you know what? I'm just too tired. I just did not get enough sleep. And so I'm just too tired to make breakfast. And so kids can connect the dots, right? Yeah. So she didn't have to say, because you woke me up. She didn't have to put that blame and go there. So apparently I never did that again. Because I understood I can't wake her up now and mess up her sleep, because then I'm not going to get breakfast. So that's just an example. And so they use that. And I think that concept has really had probably an effect on me about thinking about consequences, good and bad, in terms of navigating through life from an early age.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's cool. I mean, and I've got a 5.5-year-old, so I'm paying extra special attention.
But of course, you can't do anything like, you can't let a consequence like walking in the middle of like, the 405 freeway.
No. Yeah.
That can't be dangerous consequence. But,
No.
But missing a meal for a kid if they're misbehaving.
Yeah,
saying,
it's not gonna.
And be like, you're not capable of being at the table with us if they're misbehaving, and then you're like, you're not capable. So you put it on them, like you're not capable. Yeah. And you take the food away, they're not going to, they're still going to make it,
they'll make it.
Right?
Exactly.
But the point will not be lost on them and can have a big impact for guiding behaviors.
Yeah, it's really cool. I just read a really interesting book by Poe. I think it's Brosnan is his last name, called Nurture Shock. And it was all about, just like kids have to be able to experience the world, the ups and the downsides. You can't take all that stuff out of their world, or they won't, they won't develop. Right. So I think it's saying something very similar to what I think you're saying. And the reason I bring it up is because you've also, you've been a successful influencer, I would say, and thought leader for a while. And I've got to imagine, and I'm making this up, that you don't do that all by yourself. I mean, I think that you've got a team around you. And I wonder, first of all, I wonder if that's true. And second of all, if it is, I wonder how you think about your leadership of that team.
Well, having my wife by my side and helping all through all this is critical. So having that support network, social support network is really important.
Yeah.
And, in the practice, I have my staff, which are awesome. And many have been with me for even 15 plus years.
Yeah.
And so that's been really powerful. And I'm very grateful that I have such loyalty from my staff.
Yeah.
So for all the things I do, there's always support. The one thing, my podcast, I've got a team that helps produce it, et cetera. Yep. But for my TikTok, actually, that's 100% me.
Yeah.
Believe
That's
it or not.
Cool.
People are like, oh my gosh, like you don't have like the entourage, like these other ones.
Yeah.
Like, nope. All the ideas are 100% me. I'll sometimes do some collaborations with some other influencers. But really it's kind of really just me.
That's really classic. That's
just really
so
efficient,
awesome.
I guess.
Yeah.
Make my own videos and I have fun with that.
That's cool. Well, I just found out about that moments before we jumped on the call. And so I'm going to go check you out here. The no cap, it's Brian Boxer Wachler MD on TikTok. And I'm going to go check that out. So let me ask a different question about your team though, because that's definitely something that I find really interesting. And out of the work that I do with entrepreneurs, I know that it just makes all the difference in the world to have a good team in your practice. And what is something, and I know there's probably multiple things, but what's something that you would put that loyalty down to if you were pressed, say on the podcast called the Speak Like a Leader.show,
Well, I'm not a jerk. So
I
think that makes a big difference. 'Cause people, it's not like the 1960s, watching Mad Men. That's not how offices run these days.
No.
Also sans all the alcohol too.
Yeah.
French for without, by the way. So, that's the extent of my French. I'm done on that.
There you go.
So, but I think just being nice, being respectful, and having expectations, clear expectations as well, and rewarding your staff. I think those are all part of it. And that they feel that they're doing something that has meaning as well.
I was going to say, they get to see these people come in who feel hopeless and then walk out being hopeful and excited and, taken care of.
We're in a fortunate position because of I do procedures where people aren't struggling as much as people with keratoconus. I do LASIK, I do ICL, which is a lens for vision correction. I do cataract surgery, and that can make a huge difference for somebody's life. The people with keratoconus have usually they've had their hope taken away from them. Because of other doctors still not giving proper information to this day. We've been doing the Holcomb. We named our cross-linking for keratoconus after Stephen Holcomb. So it's called Holcomb C3R. And so we've been doing that now for 19 years. I just saw a patient today, got misinformation from another eye doctor, just not informed.
So let's just say for anybody listening right now, if you ever hear of anyone who has keratoconus, starts with a K, and it's an eye condition where you slowly lose your vision because your cornea is essentially kind of failing and becoming, it's like losing its stiffness or whatever. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And then it bulges like a hernia.
Yeah. So if you hear of anyone with keratoconus, Brian Boxer Wachler. You know, you don't have to be an ophthalmologist yourself to recommend the procedure, right? So we did our public service announcement here, just in case, because there's still just, you know, people who don't get it out there.
Yeah. But I think that is what gives the staff huge meaning in terms of helping change people's lives.
Yeah.
Like we're all in it together. I always say to them, like, we're a team. I kind of feel like we're the dream team. And, you know, people fly in from other states, other countries, have been doing so for 20 plus years. So, you know, we don't take that for granted. And we know that people are coming with these hopes. And, you know, we're pretty good with helping them change their lives, you know, when they're done and get on with what they want to do career-wise, you know, ranging from virtually any type of career.
So fabulous.
The person I just saw today was a truck driver, and he lost his job. He's on disability because he can't drive his truck. And so we mapped out what we want to do to try to get him back to being a truck driver again.
That's awesome. Yeah. You know, I mean, nothing like having something taken away from you to have you appreciate how much you appreciated it.
True. So true.
So, gosh, there was something else I was going to ask you, but let me go to the question that I would ask after that. And if I remember it, I'll ask it after this one. But so we're kind of coming up on our time together. Is there anything? Oh, I know what I was going to ask. Tell us real quickly, so we get what happens on the TikTok channel, but the No Cap Health Show, that's a podcast. So I imagine you do talk.
I do.
So what
a lot,
do you talk
actually.
About? What do you talk about there?
So usually what I'm doing is I'm taking a video that I either have already commented on or maybe one I haven't. And then I do a deep dive onto that topic. Okay. And definitely have more fun. I'm able to speak like on a podcast. You know, you're your own, you know, producer, so to speak. So you're able to say what you want to say. You don't have to worry about certain guidelines and some of the other platforms that you might have. And so it's fun, but I give people a lot more, and I'll have guests on sometimes too. Like I just had somebody who was an astronomer, and we were talking about the recent Netflix film, Don't Look Up, that big hit. Yeah. And we were talking about, okay, what are the chances that an asteroid comes and wipes us out? Because pretty much that's what happened to the dinosaurs.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened before.
Yeah, I mean, and so it was luckily that happened to the dinosaurs because that allowed humans eventually to evolve like 63 million years ago. Exactly. So we had this really neat discussion, and like, okay, space agencies are looking at asteroids and monitoring them, but they can't monitor all of them. Some of them they can't even see because they're by the sun. So that's just one example of a topic that I'll maybe have a guest and we'll talk about that too.
Well, that sounds like a total blast. And people can find that. That's the No Cap Health Show, anywhere you get your podcasts. Mm-hmm. So, Brian, is there anything that I didn't ask you about or anything that you would like to talk about before we wrap it up?
I'm getting a little hungry. Can we get a pizza?
Yeah, let's do. Boy, I wish, you know. We could each order a pizza and eat together over Zoom. Kind of the modern way of doing things, right? Right.
Honestly, John, I think we covered, so much really great information. It was so fun to go through this with you. You know, I think something that I learned that actually has research behind it, because sometimes, especially, and still to this day, there's a lot of times when people just feel really down and, mental health challenged. And by the way, the Holkey film about Stephen Holcomb really opens up that conversation about mental health too. Because what we found, I actually gave a talk at the Boys and Girls Clubs here in Los Angeles and Santa Monica. I used to go there when I was a kid, and these are like 9, 10, 11, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds. Yeah. I introduced the film, I showed the film, and they were so engaged and so paying attention. And we had this amazing discussion after, focusing on mental health.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually now in talks with other clubs in Los Angeles to do something similar, because even kids have mental health struggles, especially in sports
Very
too.
much. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think if anybody has any of those sort of, challenges, just always remember, I guess this is that, and I read this in a book. It was very powerful, that everybody is incredibly special. And if you think about what it took to be here as a living right now, that each of your past generations, going back to grandparents, great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, if any one of them didn't make it to be able to like get with somebody and have children, that line would have stopped and you wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Right. But I'm not just talking about going back 5 generations. I'm talking about
all the way back.
All the way back to like before it was even humans. Like, when they were mammals, like little 4-legged creatures. Like, if one of those lines wasn't attractive enough to mate, didn't have kids, like, you wouldn't be here. So the fact that you're here is against incredible odds. And that's why everybody is so incredibly special, and to remember that.
Yeah.
And be grateful for it. Have gratitude.
Yes. I love it. I love it. Yes. And I'm glad that little mammal that, almost got eaten, that didn't get eaten, that led to you, made it.
Yes. and had that big asteroid not hit Mexico and the dinosaurs would still be here, we would be having this podcast with whiskers in a little hole somewhere.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're right. So here we are, and really glad to be here. And it really, I'm glad we're still in touch. It was just such an honor to be able to play a little part in your message getting out via that TEDx event, and to think that, there's still some little bit of me that you carry around makes me so happy. And I think of you all the time and talk about you, and I'm going to go watch you on TikTok. And, you're one of the things that I'll just say as we close out is, I read somewhere recently that if, someone was saying, I think this might've been, a little quick thread on Twitter or something. They're saying, look, if you want to do everything, if you want to do all kinds of great things, do one thing really well first. And I think you're a good example of that, from being a really committed ophthalmologist who has an innovative idea to now being, a film producer and a TikTok star and being on Instagram and podcasting. And, I think that's really, really cool. And thank you for focusing on that one thing so that you could now be doing all these many things.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you. Cool.
My pleasure. Thanks for joining me, and thank all of you for joining us. I hope that you got something for yourself out of this, and I certainly know how much I enjoy talking to Brian, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well. We'll see you next time on SpeakLikeALeader.show. Thank you, Brian, for joining us.
Thank you, John. So happy to be here with you. It was great.
Thank you for joining the Speak Like a Leader podcast. Go be awesome.